was the 2013 Leaver Group of Environmental Geography. Since then I went on to do a Master's in Business and Globalisation down in East Anglia, and I'm now working for the World Business Council for Sustainable Development, which is based in Geneva in Switzerland. So we do some really cool work with multinational businesses. I personally work on environmental economics and helping business to measure and value its relationship with the environment, in the hope that once they can quantify that, they can integrate it more into their strategies and their decision making, and hopefully their actions. So it's really cool work and really, really interesting.
So I'm Ben Lassells. I left the Environment Department in 2001, and since then I've followed a career in wildlife conservation, working in different parts of the world, mostly on species recovery programs. So I've worked on the Isles of Scilly with the Royal Society for Protection of Birds and the Wildlife Trust as a seabird warden, in Mauritius with the Mauritian Wildlife Foundation, reintroducing endangered species there, a year with the Smithsonian Tropical Research Institute, and then most recently for the last 10 years working with BirdLife International down in Cambridge on marine conservation issues. And that's been at the kind of science policy interface, taking data and presenting it to managers, policymakers, trying to bring about a change in practice for conservation.
I got 3 notable internships during my time here and when I left. So the first one, I managed a 24-acre nature reserve down at St Nick's, which is about 10 minutes from the university. The second one, I worked with York City Council to produce a climate change action plan for the next 3 years, which will be published this year. And finally, I worked with an organisation after I left the university called Client Earth. They are a group of environmental lawyers who work with the legislation in the UK and in the EU. I worked with their toxics team predominantly and partially with their biodiversity team, so working with chemicals such as microplastics and DHP, and finally worked slightly on the Habitats Directive renewal. I now work for an organisation called ERM, and they're on a temporary contract. However, that contract is likely to be renewed. I'm working on HS2. So as an ecologist, I often visit the field, doing reptile surveys, bat surveys, great crested newt surveys. It's a fantastic experience in that sense, but I also work with their financial budget because of my math skills.
Since I left York, I've joined the Environment Agency as a flood risk officer, mostly doing mapping and modelling work, working on where flood outlines are, flood risk assessments, that kind of thing for companies and members of the public. Obviously, since the flooding in 2015, we've been working heavily on asset recovery, working out where the new flood models are, what impacts different return periods would be on. So there's a lot more work to be done going forward, and been involved in East Riding of Yorkshire with the Leeds office. I did some recovery work for the Cumbrian floods in December as well. So there's a massive amount of work stream that you can get involved in. I certainly haven't stayed to my job description initially, and going forward I'll be working with the partnership team at East Riding of Yorkshire with the different fluvial, tidal and different flood risk areas there. And I'm really enjoying the work since I left. I've certainly used my degree, and that was a big thing for me, that I wanted to actually get a job in my industry.
Following on from my degree, I originally actually struggled to find work, which I think says more about the work environment in general. But then subsequently went off with the ski season, worked in tourism for a year, then was lucky enough to land a position in India doing an internship for 6 months in the field of offshore wind studies, and I'm now actually doing my Masters in London in environmental technology, which I am currently finishing off my dissertation on marine plastics. And tying in with that, I'm actually planning a trip out to India, running a campaign that they call Ganges SUP, which stands for Ganges Stand Up Paddleboarding. The idea is that we are going to do the first descent from the headwaters up in the Himalayas right through to the delta in Bangladesh to raise awareness on water quality and plastic pollution. So that's the plan forward.
Since leaving university, I've done a bit of travelling, and then I got temporary employment at Natural England, working on agri-environment schemes with farmers and landowners, helping administrate them, helping to set up new schemes, new agreements, carrying out site visits, doing survey work. That's been really interesting, and I'm now waiting to go on to a job at the Chemicals Regulatory Directorate, which is part of the HSE, as a regulatory scientist.
I studied environmental science. I graduated in 2011. I took a year out after uni and I sort of saved up and then I went travelling for 6 months. Did the backpacker thing. And then when I got back, I was lucky enough to get a role working for an environmental consultancy. So I'm still with them now, working on wind farm sites and renewable projects. Really interesting, it's a good mix. It's out on site, in the office, reports, field work, it's good. Yeah, really interesting day-to-day stuff. And they've recently just agreed to fund the Masters for me, so I'm now going back to uni in October, which is exciting and a little scary.
When I think back to my time at York and what I got from the department, the community made it really attractive, and the fact that everybody knows the lecturers, and it feels like a really kind of supportive environment to be in. And it's so good to come back and see that that's still happening, it's growing, and it's becoming a really incredible department. That heart and soul of it is still there, and it's great to come back and see that continuing.
My experience at York University has been fantastic, and the department really gave me a fantastic toolbox to go and venture further and apply my knowledge and have a large impact on the environment.
The course here was really helpful for understanding the economic arguments in conservation and how you can use that to make convincing cases to bring about some positive changes for conservation.
I certainly used my degree, and that was a big thing for me, that I wanted to actually get a job in my industry.
I've got to say I really enjoyed the environment here. Little collegiate system, small city, really suited me well. Having studied elsewhere since, yeah, it's such a different experience. I absolutely loved it here.